coming back from the first hour, of course, the first half hour, the Admiral Bill Stubblefield, button pusher extraordinaire.
Button pusher, enjoying these buttons. I just wish I had more fingers pushing at the same time.
The Badger is back, Delegate Michael Heitz.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Longest tenured member of our crew, Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning.
Former tax commissioner of the great state of West Virginia. In studio, attorney at law, Lawrence Schultz.
It's going to be a great day, I can tell.
Via telephone, in the Joe Ferretti telephone chair, it's David Valente. Good morning, David. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, good morning. Does that mean we can call Roger Hanshaw the Badger Whisperer?
You know, I think it does. What a calming effect. Mike was like Mr. Placid. I thought I was at the 1980 Olympics there for a second. He was so chill.
Yeah, and accused by one of our listeners of throwing softball questions. And Mike says, I have to. He's my boss. He's my boss.
I'm not going to deny that. Yeah, they were softballs. Here you go.
Next
Serve
thing you
them
know,
up. Yeah.
He'll be on the lunch committee, and that's it. That's the only committee assignment he get after that.
Yeah.
Our leadoff hitter this morning in the Joe Ferretti seat is Mr. Valente. David, the chair is yours.
Hey, good morning. Sorry to bring down the group today because we got some serious issues to talk about in the world, especially when it comes to the Trump administration. So on Tuesday, he met with President Bukele of El Salvador. El Salvador has been housing several suspected Venezuelan gang members and at least a couple of people who are definitely not Venezuelan gang members and are down there by mistake, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Donald Trump asked Bukele to build more detention centers. And he wants to send homegrowns, but he didn't define what homegrowns are, whether they're homegrown terrorists or just homegrown people who are upset with the Trump administration. Kristi Noem, the public killer extraordinaire, head of the Department of Homeland Security, says that only people who love us should be here. Now we don't get a definition of who us are, whether it's the United States or the Trump administration. I suspect it's much more, the us is much more the Trump administration, but we're left up to interpretation there. People are being sent there with no due process. And that's a fundamental human right, is to have a due process when you're accused of something. Caroline Leavitt actually says the administration is looking at sending American citizens to El Salvador. The SCOTUS ruled that against the Trump administration on the Abrego Garcia case, 9-0. The Fifth Amendment says that no person, and that is no person, not no citizen, not no person that's bought a Trump gold immigration card, no person can be denied due process. Antonin Scalia has said that, especially in immigration cases. Sebastian Gorka, advisor to the president, says that those who are advocating for due process for people like Abrego Garcia can be viewed as supporting terrorism, which would probably put them in the crosshairs of being renditioned down to El Salvador. How long before American citizens get renditioned to El Salvador to appease Trump? And at what point is what Trump is doing, what he is saying and what he is doing, is a bridge too far for you? And I'll just leave you with this last caveat, is just remember that Auschwitz was an external prison camp to Germany. I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let the group talk about it.
All right, Mr. Valente with the leadoff position there, and I want to start with attorneys in the room, since due process is the basis of David Valente's introductory point here. So, Mike Carl, let me begin with you first in the due process aspect of what Mr. Valente said, as well as the overall overarching theme of his intro.
Well, I don't disagree with the premises that he laid out, but there is a big issue about whether district judges can interfere with cases that are purely, if they are purely, involving the power of the President of the United States to protect the country, to carry out his duties as such, and the big resolution of that, that tension that's been created and is ongoing will be by the Supreme Court. And I think we all should be ready, and hopefully the court will clearly lay out the pros and cons and the final rule about what the president's powers are and who does he answer to in the exercise of those powers.
And in regards to the overall theme of take the due process away, and the other things that David was alluding to in his
the rights of a non-citizen who are here is not identical to the rights of a citizen. It's not the full rights of a citizen, and the question is how far do the rights of a non-citizen person who's physically in the country, how far do they go, and what are they entitled to? And I think there's still some ambiguity about that, the answer to that, and hopefully the court will address it.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes. Let me first say that everybody hears this word due process and it sort of blurs in their mind, and they don't really know. Everyone's heard of the concept, I believe, of critical thinking. Critical thinking is simply find something that you believe, then address the best argument you can think of for why it's not true. So you believe that Luigi Mangione shot the guy from United Healthcare because you saw a video of him doing it. What's the best argument? Believe me, his lawyers will have arguments about why it's not him, about why this is, they'll have arguments. They may not be great arguments, but they'll be the best arguments you can come up with. That's how our system works. And due process is the embodiment of that. And it is at the core of what we do. With regard to Mike's comment about people who are not citizens having different rights, in some cases they do, but not in the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution. If you are going to imprison a person on American soil, you have to give them due process of law. And the Trump administration simply didn't bother. And when asked to bring him back or asked to stop the plane that was on the way, they said, "Oh, no, it's too late, and we can't interfere with this." So the second thing I would say is this: if I were advising Donald Trump as his attorney, I would say, "Oh, don't bet the game on the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case, because you got kind of a bad hand here. Play it out to something else, where instead of you lying about him having a criminal record, he actually does. Instead of you misstating the facts of the case, you can state the facts truthfully and get a little closer to the line." Instead, what they're doing is they seem to be going all in on this case that, frankly, they don't have a great chance of. Now, it could be that's because they believe they're going to flip the Supreme Court to create some exception to the Due Process Clause of the U.S. Constitution. I sure hope not. I sure hope not, because that's where autocracy begins.
And in regards to David's point about American citizens at some point being subjected to a similar situation.
Well, that's where autocracy begins, because once you do it to somebody who's covered by the Due Process Clause, there's nothing in the way of doing it to somebody who's an absolute citizen and no question also covered by the Due Process Clause. Once you blow it off, it's blown off. If self-defense is no longer a defense to killing another person, then you're not going to have self-defense available. A due process claim is not going to be available. I don't see our Supreme Court in this case going that far. They just ruled 9-0 on that issue. And one of the most conservative people that's ever been a justice on the Supreme Court, Antonin Scalia, made this very clear, as David Valente said years ago. So,
And Larry, what about the point that, well, you know what, the guy was here illegally anyway, doesn't deserve to be here in the first place?
he had gone through due process of law and had a court order that said he was here legally. So on what basis do you say he wasn't here legally? They said he was here legally and that he could stay. There was already a court. That's why this is a terrible case for Trump. Now, on the other hand, he may be betting big and saying, well, if I can win this one, then everybody's rights are going to be gone. I can do whatever I want. I think that's how the Supreme Court's going to view it, too, and I think that that suggests a bad outcome for the Trump administration, a good one for Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Bill Stubblefield.
I'm going to put my Badger hat on this morning, and I find this troubling in so many different fronts. One, on a much larger scale, I see our moral compass is shifting. We're getting to the point, if you're not in my silo, if you don't speak the way I do or look the way I do, you're wrong on so many different fronts. These folks that were sent to El Salvador, they were all painted with the same brush. But when you started looking at it in more detail, I think CBS 60 Minutes had done quite a bit of extensive research. 75% of them had no criminal record at all. No criminal record, except the fact they came into this country illegally. Well, if they came into the country illegally, deport them. That's what we're doing. You don't round them up and put them in one of the most notorious jails in our hemisphere. You don't do that. You deport them. And this comes back to the lack of due process. If they were guilty of heinous crimes like has been recently stated by our local congressman, there might be some justification. But there's no evidence that 75% of these folks were guilty of crimes of any level. So it bothers me that we, to some degree, reminds me of the old Western photographs we see of people wanting to be photographed with someone that has been shot multiple times or hung. That's not the image we need to project. I found, even though he's defending it on Fox News and other places, I found Riley Moore's visits to El Salvador to be very disquieting. In front of photographs that are individuals in misery and probably will spend the rest of their life behind those bars. Some of what were guilty of crimes, others are probably not guilty of crimes. Riley standing there with thumbs up. That is not a good projection. That is not a good image for our district, our state, our nation. So I found that to be very unfortunate.
Mike Heitz.
So I think we do need to look at the due process laws and make sure everybody's getting due process. And I think the administration in this particular case is saying that illegal aliens that are committing terrorist acts on U.S. soil are not due the same due process as other people, citizens that are here, or even other individuals who are not doing terrorist acts. Now, we could debate one way or the other whether these individuals are doing terrorist acts, but please spare me the sympathy for Mr. Garcia, who was picked up with other MS-13 gang members in an area with a lot of gang activity and was known by others to be a member of that gang, even has tattoos to that effect on his body. This is somebody who has been alleged to have beaten his wife several times by his wife. Now, whether those charges were dropped or proceeded is irrelevant. As Larry will attest, a lot of times in battery cases, those who are being battered drop the case because they don't want to see their loved one or somebody that they care about go to prison,
or they fear an even worse outcome.
Or they fear a worse outcome. So in my opinion, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. This guy was an MS-13 gang member. So I don't have a problem with him going to El Salvador. I don't have a problem with deporting these types of people who are here doing gang activity, and they're here illegally. So I don't have a problem with sending these people back to the countries that they came from, whether it's El Salvador or somewhere else. And whether or not they go to prison once they're there, I really don't care about that either. So there.
You say MS-13, and you mentioned tattoos. There have been several other arguments for the tattoos. They stand for other things, Mike. So I don't think the tattoo itself is reason to say he is MS-13.
Bill, neither you nor I are in a gang, so we don't know what those things. I would defer to the experts. I would defer to the experts that say these are MS-13 gang member tattoos, and they mean things in the MS-13 community. They have a meaning of your status in the gang, your level of hierarchy in the gang, and those people who deal with MS-13 all the time would know better, certainly, than you or I.
Yeah, but there's other folks that say just the opposite, Mike.
And with regard to all of this, there's a really simple two-word phrase that's applied since the beginning of our nation. Prove it. That's what due process is.
I mean,
you say he's got these tattoos, but we haven't had a trial. Prove it. If it's so obvious and easy to prove, then you go ahead and prove it. They just indicted Luigi Mangione.
You love to say that name, don't you? It rings, doesn't it? Luigi Mangione.
I was calling him Altoona Luigi for a while, but
Luigi's a citizen, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know that
there
this other
is
guy was.
no difference under the law between the due process rights applicable to both people. So when you come in and cite a bunch of facts, well, everybody knows, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if it's that easy, then just prove it. Prove it in a court of law. And they're not doing that. That's the root of the problem. No critical thinking. We're just going to decide. One guy in the White House is going to decide who goes to jail and who doesn't. Why doesn't he put Luigi Mangione in jail? Right? What? I mean, I saw a video of him killing a guy. It seems pretty obvious to me. So what do we need a trial for? That's not the American way. The American way is everybody gets a trial if they want one. Even Arch Moore. Now, he didn't want one. He just pled guilty. I've wondered whether the look on Riley's face when he was down there, he looks a little uncomfortable, and I was wondering if that was because he still felt bad about going to visit his granddad in prison.
Well, why was
But
he?
he's been convicted of crimes. Arch Moore.
First off, Larry, that's a low blow.
That
man
was
that man was there as part of a delegation of the Ways and Means Committee to inspect the prison that these individuals were going to, that we helped fund that particular person. That was the purpose of his trip. I don't see you complaining about the senator from Maryland who was down there trying to get somebody released.
Well, if the senator from Maryland's
also on a taxpayer dime.
If the senator from Maryland's grandfather committed crimes while governor of this
First
state,
of all,
then I would have
listen,
a different view of his
Riley Moore's
gloating
grandfather
about
is
it.
not part of this discussion.
Yes,
and
he
that
is.
No, it's not. That's a low blow.
Let me go back.
It has nothing to
get
do
this
with
back
Riley
on the
Moore.
rails and go back to David Valente. Go ahead, David.
Look, and here's some other food for thought. The National Intelligence Center says that the majority of the people that have been sent down there that are related to this Tren de Agua group in Venezuela were that the Tren de Agua gang is not aligned with the Maduro government, which is part of the reason why they say that they can declare that they're state actor terrorists and use the law to send them down there. The administration contradicts itself when it comes to this issue. And again, it can be cleared up by giving these people due process before you send them anywhere. And they're not doing that, and they're ignoring it. And if you allow the administration to just completely ignore the Fifth Amendment, then we're seeing that they're starting to go after things like the First Amendment. And they're going if you're okay with them going after the First Amendment because you don't like what some people are saying about the administration, or how some kids are protesting on a college campus, then it makes it okay to go after something that you really care about, like maybe the Second Amendment. We've heard Trump talk about issues with the Second Amendment, red flag laws and things like that. If you're okay with abrogating parts of the Constitution that make you uncomfortable, you're going to end up losing stuff. And it's only a matter of time with this administration. People need to wake up. And I'm sorry, Mike, your attitude in this whole matter is 90% of the problem. People are I don't care that they're doing this to this guy. Well, it may be somebody that you love that gets picked up that looks like, how many people in this country have tattoos? If you go on vacation and get a little bit of a tan and you have a tattoo and you get stopped coming back into the country because you're dark and you have tattoos and you get rendition to El Salvador without due process, it could be somebody you love. It could be a friend. It could be a neighbor. We've got to stop this and return to American principles, which is granting due process for every person in this country. That's an American principle that is in the Constitution. No person, not no citizen, no person. Antonin Scalia says due process is given to even immigrants and people here in this country, and it's just an American principle that we need to maintain, or we just need to write off the grand American experiment.
What is the next step, Mike or Larry, or even the other Mike and Bill, in the court process here as we sit today? Does anybody know?
The appellate court decision that came down a day ago, 2 days ago, will be going, I would think, on a fairly fast track to the Supreme Court. That's why I say I'd be a little hesitant if I was advising Mr. Trump to tell him, hey, run that one by him, because you're betting the entire sort of gambit here on a case that's kind of rough. They call them MS-13, but nobody gang tattoos, but nobody has proved that. This is just something they're saying.
Yeah, I think of equal interest, perhaps more so, is what's going to happen if President Trump ignores the Supreme Court's edict. He already is trying to ignore it by saying he has no responsibility. He cannot get them back. It's El Salvador that's got to give them up, and yet the argument rules fairly shallow, and that we're paying money to El Salvador for these prisons. What if President Trump refuses to go along with the Supreme Court?
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
But that's going to be the interesting question.
That will be, but it's not here yet, although it's kind of here.
It's kind of here, yeah.
Hey, this segment, good leadoff, David. Appreciate it. Bill, you're on the clock, along with the Badger. Mike Height in the first half of the 9 o'clock hour. The co-host, Mr. Valente, thank you for joining us via telephone.
Hey, good morning.
And the good thing about Dave is he doesn't self-mute like Ferretti does.
That could be bad.
I do, but I've been working from home for a while, so I'm very much all over the mute button. So
yeah, well, I'll mute you if I need to, but otherwise,
there
you're
go.
Good. We welcome back our co-host from the first hour as well, including the Badger, Michael Height. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good to be here.
He's in rare form today.
Good to be back.
Badger form. Longest member of our crew from a tenure standpoint, Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning, everybody. Good to be here.
Attorney at law, Lauren Schultz.
Great to be here this morning.
And with issue number 2, the Admiral, Bill Stubblefield.
Well, Rob, I've often said it's tough to follow Joe Ferretti. It's equally tough to follow David Valente. He introduced a very interesting topic.
And what do they have in common, Bill?
The topics.
No Italians.
The Italians. I overlooked that.
I tell you.
More Italians on the show is a good thing.
Rob, as you know, we put issues in each week, and I've had an issue that's been in front on my list the last 3 or 4 weeks, but I wanted to hold off until Mike Height, the Badger, was here.
Go.
No, but because it's dealing with the past session, our views, how we would evaluate the success or failures of the session. I knew we had folks from the outside looking in, but I wanted someone from the inside, their impression.
You want to ask him about IDD waiver vetoes, anything like that?
Well, I was going to ask about anything. Yeah. Or DEI, yeah. The session's been evaluated by different ways. The governor said, a great session. They got most everything through and need to get through. The the Chamber of Commerce said, well, it's opportunity lost on many fronts. We've had other folks say it was not a very successful session. So the question is to my colleagues, how would you rate the session? And what are your reasons for rating the session? Good, A, B, C, D, or F? Some of the things, let me kind of frame it. Some of the things that were accomplished, a budget was written, passed, and that was important. And Mike Carl will say that was very important, as did the Speaker of the House this morning. School discipline, Senator Grady's bill was passed. Not passed was dealing with certificate of need, vaccination exemptions, which I think that was a real success, not passing either one of those. A lot of social issues were passed, but not passed were, except for the data centers, very little for economic development. PEIA was not looked at. Our child welfare, even though the local judge or circuit judge said that it's not a judiciary issue, it's a legislative issue, but the legislators did not address that. Economic stimulation, recruiting qualified teachers. There's a whole group of things that were not addressed. But as I said, the budget, school discipline were part of them that were addressed. So open up to my colleagues. Rob, how would you evaluate the success of the session, and what were your reasons for doing so?
All right, let's go to our man on the inside first, Michael Heights.
So let me preface this with, this is my opinion and nobody else's. I give this session a C-. We did pass some decent legislation, but this was, especially on the Senate side, it seemed as, I don't know, just a complete mess over there at times. And you talk about some of the bills that didn't pass, the vaccinations and things like that. And it seemed like the Senate was pushing a lot of social issues this year. And then when they didn't get their way, they sort of pouted. Senator Stewart, the Judiciary Chair, what a bonehead. This guy and also Senator Chapman from the Northern Panhandle, who was the chair of health. What another bonehead. Both of these individuals shut down their committees with a week or two to go because they weren't getting their way with certain social bills like vaccines, which, I just found to be just such childish behavior on some of these individuals. Now, you talk about the budget. On the other hand, I thought Jason Barrett and Vernon Chris did a great job negotiating back and forth on the budget. I thought it came out early, which usually doesn't happen. You usually don't see the budget till almost the last day. I think we had a budget in the final week, but it was several days before the end of session that we could negotiate back and forth once we saw it. So I thought that went wonderfully, only to have our governor line item veto certain things in the budget that I thought were important and were negotiated by the legislature. Was not happy about some of those line item vetoes. So you have to realize, number one, this is only my third session, but if I were to rate it against the other two sessions, it's been the worst one I've been there so far as what we got accomplished. I thought the process on the House side, there was changes in the process, and I thought that went very well, and I thought that was a benefit to us. But overall, I would give it a C minus.
Mike,
One
how
of
would
the
you,
one of real second, Bill. One of the things that was, I understand, in the original budget was Martinsburg Library has been shut down, and they need a tremendous amount of money to reopen, and $1.5 million of that is for an HVAC system, which was, with the help of Senator Barrett, and I assume many of you from the Eastern Panhandle, Mike, in the budget, and Governor Morrissey scrapped $500,000 of that. Well, the HVAC system costs what it costs. And now they're $500,000 short of an HVAC system, so we're right back to where do we get the $500,000 to fix that, to reopen the library? And this is a governor from the Eastern Panhandle who said he'd remember the Eastern Panhandle when he got elected. Well, that's not remembering the Eastern Panhandle very well.
It is, but not in a particularly positive way.
It's remembering it. Yeah. Maybe you wish you'd forgot about it, maybe. Yeah, better off with amnesia on that one, Bill.
Yeah, I was going back to process in the Senate, and you have to add to that list the fiasco of the DEI legislation that was passed literally in the last seconds, and they violated all the Senate rules to get that passed.
Well, you're right. That seemed like it was a complete mess over there. And we debated on the House side for several hours. This piece of legislation went for several hours. A lot of it was just obstruction by the Democrats in the end, and them trying to use as much up the clock so it didn't pass as possible. We even made motions to limit debate and so on and so forth, and they still tried as much as possible to stop that piece of legislation. But you're right. Once we got it out of the House and it went over to the Senate, I don't know what the heck happened over there. I mean, it was just like it passed, and then they had to reconsider, and then, being in the House side, we're still running bills over there, so you can't follow what's going on as much. But you can tell that they're in like total disarray about the procedure and what's going on over there. And I'll be quite honest, I don't know what happened, but looking from the other side, it was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on over there? And where's the leadership? And even you're supposed to have a parliamentarian over there that's supposed to be helping the leadership make sure they get procedure done properly. We had on the House side, now we have the parliamentarian of all parliamentarians on the House side, which helps. But still, there's somebody there that's supposed to know the rules and how to process those, and it just didn't happen there. I don't know what happened there.
Larry Schultz.
Yeah, I'm not a close follower of every move by the legislature. To me, and maybe there's something that was done quietly that we haven't been told about. But to me, one of the big looming potential tragedies for the state of West Virginia, and I'll talk about this more in my question, is the Medicaid cuts that are coming. And I've yet to hear anyone. Now, there was a little talk by Mr. Henshaw earlier today. That's the first I've ever heard an elected West Virginia official talk about what are we going to do. And he didn't talk very much about a plan or an idea. This is a looming tragedy, like a tornado, potentially. We don't wait until the wind gets to 100 miles an hour to make a plan. We get a forecast, hopefully, that the tornado is coming, and we make the plan while the winds are still calm. And I don't see that going on. So the fact that didn't get addressed, and we spent an awful lot of time on culture war issues, those two things were disappointing.
What letter grade?
C minus or below. I don't know that I'm qualified to necessarily go to a D, and I wouldn't put an absolute grade on it, but C minus or a D, somewhere in there.
David Valente.
Yeah, I look at the legislature in classic spaghetti Western fashion. So I'm going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Sweet, Hugo Montenegro, baby.
That's right. Licensure reciprocity was good. I'm glad to see that, although I think we do need to do more work on licensure reform so that we are serving West Virginians who want to get into industries that are protected by licensures. But good start on licensure reciprocity with other states. Bad, well, and also good that the vaccine exemption bill failed. Bad, the foster care system. There were some bills that kind of tinkered around the edges, but is still dealing with foster care as a significant issue in the state. Ugly, Morsi is addressing it somewhat with his line item vetoes, but no preparation for the fiscal storm, not just Medicaid, but also looming education, federal funding cuts to education in the state of West Virginia. There's not really a whole lot of prep going on for that from a legislative standpoint. Again, too much airtime given to social issues, the DEIA stuff, that stuff just turns into a performative clown show, and the GOP would do well to kind of tamp that down, but it seems to be a feature, not a bug of at least especially the Senate at this point. But as far as a letter grade, D.
D. We got 2 C minuses and a D. Mike Carl.
Well, the major issue that ought to be addressed and wasn't effectively addressed is the excess spending of our state government on bureaucracy.
That's a great point, because he brought that up in his inauguration speech, or his State of the State speech, but we didn't hear too much about that.
Exactly, and that that is again, it's been an ongoing. I'm not going to say that Morrissey's effort was any worse than any of his predecessors, but that is the number one problem in West Virginia, is that we have too much state government spending bureaucracy, and we need to facilitate further tax relief, and the failure to make that happen says I'm going to give him a D.
A D. Oh, these are below the line grades here, Bill Stubblefield.
And I'm going to change my rules a little bit, since my question. I'm going to give the House a B. I'm going to give the Senate a D.
We're in Kent Dorfman range here. Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life. we've got like what's our QPA on this one? About 1.2.
We could discuss this for probably the next hour, and I could dispute a lot of the things you're saying.
Or you could agree.
Or I could agree. Absolutely. Let's get it over with. But some of the things you're giving negative grades for, I could dispute. The Medicaid issue, we did address that, and there is some concern. How do you address something when you don't know what's going to happen from the feds? It's all talk right now, but we did try to address it with some certain areas, and try to pass legislation that said if then, and it's difficult to pass legislation that says if then, so it sort of got derailed because of that. So there are a lot of different things we're discussing right now that I would say that we did address some tax issues. So it's not as bad as what I think everybody's thinking.
Yeah, and I want to add something to it, a caveat to it. And we've lumped the Senate as one
Sure.
bite. However,
Yeah.
I think a shining light that came through this year was Jason Barrett. When Jason was on Wednesday, I think it was, his knowledge of the budget and the budget process and the various puts and takes was extremely impressive. Also, the fact he was looking out for the Eastern Panhandle,
Sure.
I thought was very impressive. Well, so I want to pull Jason out, and I think he was doing a pretty impressive job.
I would agree with that, and I think that has a lot to do with his relationship with the people on the House side that are in the Finance Committee, that they all get along very well. So I think there were a lot of good discussions that went on behind the scenes to make that budget come out the way it did.
All right, issue number 3.
He's not a bonehead?
What's that, Dave?
So he's not a bonehead?
No. Jason's not a bonehead.
Not today.
But we did get 2 Bonehead Awards. Have to make a trophy when the Badger's on Bonehead of the Week. Just get a milk bone on there. All right, Badger, I can't wait to see what this is going to be like. Issue number 3, Michael.
I am getting away from the state politics.
Well, that was entertaining.
So my question is going to be, Biden returns to the spotlight this week. He came out and had a speech, and I'm just wondering what everybody's opinion is about that. Was it too soon? Was it about time he came out as the previous president 3-4 months in? And was there any substance to his speech at all, or should he just fade off into retirement?
All right, let's go to the show's biggest Biden defender ever, Michael Carl. Go ahead, Mike.
That shows how much trouble he's in. Well, I almost think that he needed to do that speech, just to get it over with. and so from the Democrats' point of view, the sooner the better in terms of future progress. But I just it didn't surprise me that they did it, but it really just confirms my perspective of his limitations and the party's limitations for letting him lead them, in both in 20 and almost in 24 up to the last minute. So I just think that Biden's involvement, is a problem for the Democrats. But I don't know how they're going to solve it, and that's their real problem.
Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, I didn't even see Joe Biden's speech. I do know that my stock portfolio was in a lot better health when this supposedly demented man was running the country than it is now when the similarly aged genius that y'all elected is running the country. There's been, I was a big fan of sled riding when I was a kid. I never brought it on to skiing, right, which is the adult version of sled riding, I guess. But I love that. I would love to have some hills like the ones we're seeing in the Dow day to day and in the futures, because that would be very exciting for a sled riding hill. But it's not all that exciting for where we are. Joe Biden, I think, did an excellent job as president. I'm having a hard time finding an economic indicator that has vastly improved from day one, the way we were told it was going to. But, of course, we were going to end the Ukraine-Russia war on day one, too. And now they're talking about just walking away from that. So, I don't have a lot of stake in what Joe Biden does as a private citizen. I think it's perfectly fine that a former president of the United States steps in once in a while to remind everybody of how successful he was, because our economy was in a whole lot better shape then, especially looking forward, than it is now. So, yeah, if he wants to make a speech every week, he can do it as far as I'm concerned.
Bill Stubblefield.
Yeah, Mike, interesting question, and I think there are two audiences to this. The only people I've heard that listen to it or even knowledgeable of the speech are the Republicans. It made no dent at all, I think, on at least the Democrats that I have talked to, or the news outlets that I watch, which is primarily public television. I do not know. I have no sense at all because I did not hear anything about the speech. The fact that he even made a speech, I don't think that was necessary because Larry Schultz and others have alluded, and Mike Carl on a regular basis, that the Democrats have got to find an identity. They don't have an identity right now. They, as we've talked on the show before, they need to do a rebranding, and having Biden continually in front of the mic really detracts from any rebranding they're trying to do. But as far as the results of that particular speech, I don't know because I have not even heard a clip of it.
That brings us to the phone and David Valente.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen clips of the speech. When I saw that he was going to come out, again, it's not inspiring by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he defended his administration, and he attacked Trump on Social Security cuts and things like that, and went after Elon Musk and his merry band of raiders. But in a broader question, is this a good thing for the Democrats? No. Having Biden try and be the public face of the party at this point is the exact opposite of what the party needs moving forward. They need the younger voices. I know that Bernie Sanders and AOC are out doing their whistle-stop tour, and they're drawing large crowds. I don't even know that Bernie Sanders is the face that the Democrats need out there, or AOC. But they do need someone that is going to forcefully articulate the costs of what is going on with this administration that isn't really tainted. I don't think that AOC is the person that's going to bring the people to the polls for the Democrats. I think it's going to be someone that is much more moderate or mainstream that is going to get the people back into the Democratic camp if we're allowed to vote in 26 and 28. But again, Biden is not the person that you need out there. But I mean, former presidents make speeches all the time. If you're going to drag a former president out there and watch them give a speech, you'd probably be much better with Barack Obama than either Bill Clinton or Joe Biden at this point. But again, the Democrats need to identify a younger voice, somebody that is very articulate, that can speak to the pain points that this administration is putting on America, the threats that this administration is putting onto American values and the Constitution, and put it in such a way that it talks to the kitchen table issues of the average American family. Again, the Democrats have been so far focused on the coast and ignoring the flyover country. And they've got to learn how to speak to the flyover country so that people in the Midwest and the South can identify that the Democratic Party is not just speaking to coastal elites.
And we go back
and understands their issues.
Mike Height, wrap it up.
So I would say that by everybody's answers, that because you don't know who it was, there was no substance to the speech, and the Democratic Party right now is rudderless. And who is their leader? Nobody knows right now. That person hasn't emerged, and David's right. You got about 2 years to figure out who that person is.
And on that note, we break for the halftime at 9 o'clock. Well, the good, the bad, and the ugly play us into that break. Thank you, Mr. Valente, defense attorney. He's joined on the telephone by David Valente. David, welcome back.
Good morning.
Notice he doesn't self-mute. Joe Ferretti, just saying if you're listening anywhere along the way. The Badger, Michael Height.
Good morning.
Michael Carl.
Good morning.
Mr. Bill Stubblefield.
And good morning.
And with issue number 4, Larry Schultz.
Great to be here. Well, I have no elected officials in West Virginia, and I'm specifically excluding Mike Height from this, either state or federal, developed a plan or published a plan or even complained to the feds about the Medicaid cuts that Senators Justice and Capito voted for the other day. If there is some sort of plan that's been developed, I sure haven't heard a single person, and I've been looking really hard for a month for somebody to tell me what the plan is. The cuts that are pending under this budget will be $880 billion total, but included in that is defense, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That doesn't leave, I don't see any giant cuts for defense or for Social Security, because that has become, once again, the third rail of American politics. And so there's got to be a big Medicaid cut if they're going to do this. What are we going to do?
Well, in regards to Social Security cuts, Larry, I'm sure when you've attempted to log into your Social Security account, it does tell you that right now you're, as of 2033, I think it is, going to get 78% of your benefit unless something enhances those benefits in the near future. So there will be a cut unless Congress acts sometime in the future to make sure it doesn't go down to 78%. So let's go to Mike height first because he's in the legislature.
Well, so that has been discussed in the legislature, what would happen. And I think most likely we would go back to the way we were doing before the Medicaid enhancement happened. And I think, we talked a little bit earlier when the speaker was on that we're at a 90-10 split right now. The state has
what does that mean, Mike?
So the state has to pony up 10% of the money for Medicaid, and the feds pay the other 90%. What that was before was, I believe, a 70-30 split.
With no Medicaid expansion in it.
Correct.
So would we be getting rid of Medicaid expansion coverage?
That's probably exactly what happened, because the state cannot afford to pick up the other 20%. That we put more people on Medicaid in West Virginia because we only had to pony up 10%. And if the feds drop that and we have to pony up 30% like we did before, and that 30% before was about what we're paying in 10% now. So what happens is you have to take all those people that got onto Medicaid because of that enhancement will now have to come off of Medicaid. We will no longer be able to support those people on Medicaid.
About 166,000.
That is exactly what it is. Yes.
Has anyone looked, and I don't want to overtake this, has anyone looked at what effect that will have on nursing homes or on rural hospitals? Because not only does the person lose their coverage, but the hospital loses the payment for that person's health care coverage.
Sure, absolutely. Well, those individuals would have to go back to similar whatever they had before. It could be through the ACA and try to find their coverage in that fashion, whatever they had before. And some of them didn't have coverage before, and that was the reason for the expansion. I get all that. The simple fact of the matter is the state cannot afford to pay 30%. Just don't have the money.
And okay, I'll get to it later. I'm not going to interrupt every time.
Mike Carl.
Well, even if the effort is to cut benefits, there clearly can be a lot of mishandling, double counting, inefficiency, bad bureaucracy associated with the benefits. And so some serious, curtailment may be justified, but it's welfare.
Is that examination at the federal level or the state level or both?
Both.
Mike, is there an effort to look at the state level in terms of benefits and money that could be saved from misuse of funds?
Well, sure. I mean, we're always looking for ways to save money and make cuts, especially in the Medicaid area, because that's one of our biggest budget items. But as it pertains to this, there's just the enormity of picking up that other 20%. I don't know where the money would come from or how you would cut that much from the budget to absorb that.
Bill?
What would you cut?
Yeah, going back, I'm sure there's some abuse, but it's also the Medicare, Medicaid have been the groups that have received as much scrutiny as any other in both the state, at least the federal level. I assume the same thing at the state level. So again, I yield to the fact there's probably some abuse. I don't know. I don't think it's a great amount, but we'll see. But going back to your question, Larry, there was a move afoot in the House very early in trying to take this project head on. The sponsor of the bill was highly criticized by getting ahead of the process, and the triggers that were going to kick in they felt were inappropriate. And I've forgotten the details, but I do know there was a move on the part of certain members of the House.
Correct.
Right now, there's so many unknowns. We're picking up on what one or two people say and giving a lot of flesh to those statements. I've heard other revenue generating avenues that might take some pressure off of the Medicaid or some pressure off Medicare. I do not know how it's going to sort out. I think that this is what Speaker of the House said this morning. It was a little premature to start hitting the panic button because we don't know what the form of the problem will take. If it's severe, then we'll do what we do all the time. We'll call a special session and we'll address it from the rights. Can I criticize the past legislative action or legislators of not trying to fabricate a problem that they see and come up with a solution to a fabricated problem? Or speculative is a better word, a speculative problem? No, I don't think we should. I think that I will not criticize the legislators at all on this issue. I think if something comes down the pike, call a special session and they'll look at it.
David Valente.
Yeah, I mean, there can be ways to prep for things, and to what other people have talked about. There are always inefficiencies within government. A lot of times we have inefficiencies because past abuses have happened. We put in special breaks and things like that to make sure that we don't see those abuses happen again. But yeah, for us in West Virginia, we are so much more dependent on the state, not just with Medicaid funding, but education funding and other avenues, that these disruptions are going to blow up any budget that that whether Morrissey takes a bigger pen to the rest of the budget is. I think he signed it, so I guess not. But preparations do need to be happening. I'm glad Mike says that there are discussions going on. I'm glad they're looking at stuff, but those impacts are going to have a lot of social impacts in this state, not just from a money standpoint, from people having to take care of grandparents that may not be able to get into nursing homes, and dealing with healthcare costs that they didn't have to bear before. It's going to have a large social disruption on the state, and discussions and preparations do need to be made. I get that we don't know exactly what it looks like, but we're getting an idea at this point. They've the Capitol and Justice have approved the bill, and so we get an idea of where it's going to fall. So those discussions need to start taking on a more firmer look. Special session would be appropriate if it's comes down between now and the mid part of the year. And other than that, then we can go back into regular session next year.
Mr. Schultz, back to you.
Yes. I agree with Bill that it's premature to hit the panic button, and that's not what I intend to suggest by this. But one of the ways you avoid ever having to hit the panic button is by doing your homework and your work ahead of time. 76% of all nursing home beds in this state are paid for by Medicaid. If you make a cut of 5% of that money, however you've decided to arrange it, what's the effect on the revenue of those nursing homes, and what is the effect on their ability to survive? I have actually done nursing home malpractice cases. When you cut the staff in a nursing home, then the number of bed sores, falls, and other life-threatening incidents are more likely to occur. So you might not see bankruptcy of nursing homes. You might see nursing homes operating on 80% of the staff they had before the cuts. What are we prepared to do to fill those gaps? And I agree, West Virginia doesn't have anywhere near 3 times the money we're giving the feds for Medicaid now. That's why, to avoid hitting the panic button, I'm hoping for some not just private, but public planning and public, no, I wouldn't say attacks, but reminders to our federal agents who are voting for this stuff. Hey, we're over here, and Mom's going to be coming home with her nursing home problem, and I don't have any way to care for her myself out of my pocket, and we need to do something. And I'm just not hearing enough urgency, not panic, but urgency about getting a plan in place so we don't have to hit the panic button.
All right, to issue number 5, Mr. Michael Carl.
Well, of course, Trump's tariff agenda has triggered a lot of reflection about our relationship to other countries. And something, I'm just throwing out my own perspective on this, and I'm interested in everybody else's. I've always felt that our relationship with Japan post-World War II is the greatness, implements the greatness of America. And that Japan has responded. They are a strong, capitalist country, and despite the fact that they started World War II against us with bombing in Pearl Harbor, and we ended it with atomic bombs on their country. Despite that history, they are one of our greatest allies and strongest allies, and the fact that where they are, geographically in on the edge of Asia, really makes it important and strategically significant. So I just want to see what other people think about our relationship with Japan.
And in regards to tariffs in general?
Oh,
or
just
the
generally.
Japanese relationship?
Just generally.
Overall. Yeah. Work it all in, Bill Stubblefield.
Yeah, I know there's no reason to disagree with you, Mike. I think Japan has been a strong ally. There's others as well. Germany, for example, has been a strong ally since the war. More recently, Vietnam is a very strong ally, especially with some of our trade products, fisheries and
Southern Vietnam.
No, Vietnam as a total. Vietnam as a total has been a strong ally. So there's a lot of other, lot of countries that have been strong allies, very productive allies. What scares me, Mike, is that these tariffs are going to put pressure on some of these countries to drift away from us. Vietnam is a prime example. They have always been a supporter of the U.S. as opposed to Japan, to China, and now there's some talk about trying to establish trade with China. We're hearing that with Japan. We're hearing that with Europe. Are we going to reap the side benefits or the dastardly benefits of these trade wars and forcing some of our reliable partners, both trade partners and cultural partners, into the camp of China? And I hope not, but there's a great possibility this happens. New Zealand's another one you can add to that list. India's another one you can add to that list. There's a long list.
Yeah, Mike, you might have been thinking South Korea when you were correcting Bill there for a second.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Vietnam. I
heard a vendor this morning an American vendor talking about how outsourcing to Vietnam, you had more reliable products than the stuff you were importing from China. It was one of the compliments toward Vietnam.
And let me very quick say, I was on a trade mission a few years ago to Vietnam, and looking at products, the fish products primarily. They send a lot of their fish to the west coast of the U.S. for the catfish. We get the East Coast catfish from Louisiana. The West Coast catfish comes a lot from Vietnam.
West Coast catfish are more laid back. The East Coast ones are very uptight.
But the hygiene, the sanitation of what we see in Vietnam, we have nothing to compare to what they do. Literally, the fish goes from a living state to a processed state in something like 5 minutes, and you would think you were in a hospital operating room with the sanitation and cleanliness. So we cannot casually dismiss this country because they are state of the art, at least with fish.
Mr. Height.
So, as it pertains to the tariffs, I think what the Trump administration is saying is it doesn't matter who our trade partners in. There has to be equality in trade, and right now we don't have equality in trade. We can have no tariffs on products that we're getting from Vietnam, and then they put a 30% tariff on what we're trying to trade back, and that's an inequality. I don't care whether they're allies of ours or whether they're opponents like China is. So I think there has to be a balancing of the trade so that American products have a place in the world as well. And I think that's what he's trying to establish. As far as Japan, well, Of course, Japan's government loves us. They have no military. They have to love us. Or China will be over invading Japan and taking over. That's the only reason they love us right now and they're allies with us right now. The people can't stand us. They don't want us over there. They don't want us in their population. You ever been to China or to Japan?
Yes.
Yeah. They don't like us. They don't. So, to say that we're good allies with Japan and we have a good relationship is only because we're defending them from the rest of the world right now. And it's strategic for us to do so because we need to be in that part of the world. But as far as relationship, it's not the greatest of relationships.
Mr. Valente.
Well, I mean, when you drop a couple of nuclear bombs on a country, the population may not be so happy with you. But
don't start a war then.
As far as
Mr. Valente.
Those were necessary.
I think they learned that lesson.
I think so.
Yeah. So let's, as far as relations between U.S. and Japan, the governmental relations are fine. Mike is right in the sense that population is not so keen on Americans when it comes to like our bases and things that are still in the country. But the impacts of the trade war, even as Trump pulls them off and puts them back on and cuts out this and cuts out that, it erodes the trust in America as a good partner. And, the countries, trade really relies on trust and reciprocity. And, you can make moves as far as tariffs go that will help encourage reciprocity. But these kind of willy-nilly numbers that Padoma numbers that Trump put out for the Liberation Day tariffs just make no sense, and it erodes the trust in America. So even if we do take back the tariffs, there's we only have a 90-day window at this point. There's always the threat that he just gets mad and throws tariffs on again, and so trade partners are going to look for other avenues, whether it's China, whether it's Japan, whether it's India. There are large markets out there. We're not the whole game anymore. The talk was that China would eclipse the American economy by 2050. I would say by the end of the decade, as things are going right now, that the Chinese economy will eclipse the U.S. economy just by the moves that the Trump administration is making with regards to trade. Whether he holds the tariffs on or not, it's the erosion of trust in the Americans as a good trading partner that is the most damage of what we're seeing right now.
Comes back to you for the final minute, Michael Carl.
Well, I acknowledge Donald Trump is not flawless, but I have 1,000 times more confidence in him to do the right thing by these trade policies than China.
Larry, you had a point?
Yeah, just very quickly, Japan has been our ally for a very long time, like Canada, like Mexico, and it's gratuitous what we're doing. And when you just, for no reason whatsoever, jack slap your good buddy, he stops being your good buddy. And that's pretty much what we've done.
All right. On that note, we will get our final thoughts in here before we have our Good Friday show come to a close here. A little Peter Cottontail theme in the background for you to take you out in the holiday spirit. Final seconds, you get, final minute, you get 8 seconds apiece. David Valente, go.
Happy birthday to my sister, Kara, who's celebrating her birthday.
Yeah, smart move there, Mr. Schultz.
You take your coat that you wore to work and just put it in the car. You're not going to need it when you leave today.
The weather report, Mr. Stubblefield.
The Badger did not disappoint.
Michael Carl.
The Cards are tied with the Reds for third place, but they're still ahead of the Pirates.
Pirates took 3 out of 4 from the Nats, baby. Mr. Michael Height.
It is good to be home. I think I'm going to sleep for a week.
That'll work. Till next Friday.
Someone said you had been.
That was during the session.
Dave Ramsey show's coming up next. Have a great Easter weekend. This is Talk Radio. Doing on Martinsburg and TV10. We'll talk to you in 70 short hours.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.